Testing audio.
It's showtime. It's texture. It's showtime?
Ada, can you hear me?
She just texted you can hear.
Hey, Karina, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Finance Committee of the Golden Rain Foundation of Laguna Woods. It is, 1:32? All right. I'd like to acknowledge that we are online and so therefore acknowledge the media. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda. So moved.
I'd like to add something to the agenda.
Okay, proceed.
It's probably being number 8.
Microphone. Turn on your mic, please. Microphone.
Okay, this would be number 8 or 7A, however you want to do it. And it's regarding the current valuation of undeveloped Laguna Woods Village property.
This is under items for discussion,
Yes,
and you want to discuss the valuation of unutilized property?
yes.
Any objection? Hearing no
You could-
objection?
You could put / rezoning. It's about the rezoning that's coming up.
Okay. All right. Any objection to the agenda as amended?
Do we have information available to be able to review that? Oh. No objection.
Any objection to the agenda as, okay, it is passed then. All right. The meeting report from our last meeting is attached. I entertain a motion to approve that. Mickey Choi. Any objection? Okay, we have a second. And any objection? Objection, it is approved. Chair's remarks, I don't have any remarks. And so we cut to member comments for items not on the agenda. Do we have people signed up to speak?
Yes, we do.
Okay, proceed, please.
Mary Wall.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. I have, well, first of all, I'm going to ask about the revenue for the Bridge Club. I asked that at the CAC meeting, and they couldn't tell me. I'd like to know how much revenue the Bridge Club.
Give me just a moment. I can possibly pull it up. Can I see if you that works too. Did you have a follow-up comment, or are you just looking for the number? Because I can get you that number here in a few minutes.
I just want to know how much they give, you know. They tell me they give $60,000 or something like that, so I'm just trying to confirm the figures, the amount.
It's approximately that dollar amount. I will let you know that I'll get you that number here shortly, but we're also going to be discussing as one of the many fees that are being discussed in the current year, an evaluation of the bridge fees is going to be coming up in the fourth quarter of this year. So sometime between October 1st and December, we'll be discussing the fees, how it was calculated, and any potential changes on a go-forward basis.
So was that 60,000 is it a year or a quarter or a month? Or?
I'm just getting an indication from our recreation department head that it's actually $30,000 in 2023,
30,000 a month they provide.
a year.
30,000 a year.
Yes.
Well, that's going a long way to go to pay for the $7 million building. Anyway, I'll move on, thank you. The drop-in lounge, I've just visited it, like all of you have, I believe. And the door to the drop-in lounge, I just hurt my back opening it. That door needs to be automatic. The front and the back door need to be automatic. The people who use that are people with walkers and wheelchairs. If I can't open it and I'm an able-bodied person, then there's something wrong with the doors. Also, they provided a dishwasher for paper cups. I mean, you know, and neither the staff in Clubhouse 1 did not want a refrigerator because it causes problems. People leave food in and they have to clean it out and everything. That's more work for them. And the dishwasher is absolutely ridiculous. It's a waste of money on both of those items. Also, I believe they're going to replace all the furniture in drop-in lounge. Do you know how much those chairs cost? $500 each, the ones that have a backing to them. They sent them out to an interior decorator to get done. I have the invoices for all this. I think before they replace any of those chairs or tables, that there should be an evaluation done, not just carte blanche, clearing everything out and putting everything in. And in fact, when it comes to all the furniture, $50,000 is a lot of money to spend, and I think that somebody should be taking note of what's being spent and where it's being spent. There's so much waste here, it's incredible. I don't know what you can do with the dishwasher, but it was not wanted, and it's there. And we have no clocks. What's the matter with clocks? There's no clock in the showers, there's no clock in the drop-in lounge, there's no clock. $4 you can get from Target, a clock. And also the flooring in the showers in Clubhouse 1, the pool one, after a few hours, filthy, absolutely filthy. Just a few things that I'd like to put forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ellen Leonard?
Good afternoon. Is that bell mean your time's up?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I wanted to talk about what I think the focus of GRF should be. And I think it should be card readers, smart cards, because that way we would know who's using our facilities, how many users are in a facility, who's on the bus, who's using the equestrian center. Card readers should be number one on your mind. Cost or no, you know, whatever the cost should be, that should be the beginning. My second comment is the difference between a resident and a member. Can anybody define that? A resident and a member?
I can give it a shot.
Go ahead. Yeah.
A
Thank you.
resident is somebody who lives here.
Yeah.
A member is somebody who owns here.
Okay. Thank you. I think we need to be cognizant of that when we're describing users. Okay. Thank you.
If I can maybe ask whoever has a cell phone, if you can hit silence, please. Oh, it's on Zoom.
Can you read that? Any other?
Director Carlson?
Good afternoon, everybody. I particularly wore one of my equestrian scarves for the event, so you can guess what I'm going to talk about. I reviewed the staff report, and I have a couple of points of information. We have, what it recommends is 71%.
So just a point of order, right? If this is for member comments, is for items not on the agenda.
Oh, Excuse me. Well, I did. I commented on my scarf.
Anyone else?
Sue Quam?
Well, hi. I wanted to just commend the Recreation Department for the great job they have done in uh, updating Clubhouse One. We walked through that, and they have really done a good job. They're on budget, on time, and the items that they replaced to me looked like they really needed to be replaced. And so I'm very happy with this. I think our members and residents will be very pleased. Thank you.
Anyone else?
That's all.
Is that it? Okay. Thank you for your comments. Do we have any I've got a line here for board comments? Any board, but I'm going to put one in here anyway. Any board comments on the member comments this time?
I love the idea about the card readers, more card readers we have everywhere, at pools and rec centers and that, the better data we have as to the participation. So,
Something that we are looking at in SCAC. This is welcoming.
Okay.
Sure, Director
So
Colon,
let's
if I-
move on then to items for discussion. We have the equestrian fee recommendation, and I
Sure.
believe
If I may just real quickly respond directly to Mrs. Wall. So she's left.
no, she's over the coffee.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Just to let you know, so we budgeted for the bridge fees. We budgeted in 2024 and 2025 about $35,000. We're anticipating as of right now, I think we have $50,000 in revenue as of August, and we'll probably hit about 65 by the end of the year. So, correct. So, thank you.
Okay.
Question?
I believe we're on to the equestrian fee, and so staff.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So I'm going to read their recommendation directly from the staff report, and then I'll dive into some of the background and the discussion. So quickly, the recommendation. Staff recommends the committee review and endorse the proposed schedule of equestrian fees, which is attached in this document, attachment number 1, with an effective date of January 1st, 2025. So a little background for those of you, we've already been through this a couple times in terms of the overall fee review that's being conducted. As a reminder, in 2023, we did an evaluation of all GRF fees, and we made a determination that was ultimately approved by the board of what fees should be reviewed at what frequency and ultimately when. So we've already done traffic, we've done golf, we've done room reservations, and now before you, per the schedule that was approved by the board, we're discussing the equestrian fees. And we have a couple more that are going to be coming up in the remainder of the year. As I mentioned earlier, bridge is one of them. So additional background, back in 2022, a resolution was passed by the GRF board approving the fact that 70% of the equestrian costs would be absorbed by the community and 30% of those fees would be charged back via fees for various sources, primarily resident horses, the boarding of such. Currently, where it stands right now is also included in one of the supporting schedules. For 2025, we're looking at, we budgeted in 2025 without the inclusion of these changes because clearly they're not budgeted just yet, or they're not approved, excuse me. So in the 2025 budget, we have an estimated 81% of the costs are going to be subsidized by the community, and only 19% of those costs are going to be recovered through fees. So before you, again, we are having some fees that we are bringing up to raise it to the level that is in adherence of the resolution of the 30% recovery. The last time that we had the fees reviewed and implemented was back in May of 2023. At that time, it still did not go up enough to meet the 30% resolution. And then in our previous finance committee, again, whenever we're doing these fee reviews, we break it up and we bring before the committee the cost element, and then a secondary meeting such as today where we talk about the fees. The last time that we met on August 21st, we had disclosed that the cost had increased by over $200,000 year over year from 23 to 2024. Various reasons went into that, including staffing. Supplies have gone up dramatically. And again, so we're bringing before you some cost increases. The biggest components of these fees are both the horse boarding fee, which is the primary, as well as the lesson fees. So both of those are being reviewed and discussed here. The existing cost right now for a resident to board their horse on a monthly basis is $265 and $325 on a monthly basis for non-residents. Including in that fee is 3 shavings per week. So one of the suggestions that we're bringing before you today is, as part of the increase in the overall monthly fee, is it's staff's recommendation to go from 3 bags to 5 bags in order to cut down on some of the flies and just general upkeep. Additionally, we are recommending that the lessons are increased right now. The fee associated with those lessons. So right now the fees are $20 per hour for a 45-minute lesson if you're using a GRF horse, or $15 per hour for a 45-minute lesson. So those are for residents, and then those same costs for a GRF horse or a leased horse would be $55 and $35 for non-residents. So, excuse me, that is the current cost. And then some of the changes that we're also recommending is that there's an elimination of trail rides. Based from a risk perspective, it's our recommendation that we eliminate the trail rides, as those are really not really intended for beginner riders and could expose the communities to some additional risk. If I can go ahead and have Karina, if you can turn to page 3 of 5. There you go. So on screen, you're going to see some of the increased fees, or the proposed fees, I should say. The primary driver of the revenue coming out of the Equestrian Center is that horse boarding fee on the top line. I do acknowledge that it is a $265 to a $410 proposed fee. That is about a 50% increase, 54 to be exact. So it is a sizable increase, but acknowledging the fact that you're going from a 19% cost recovery to a 30% recovery, which is what was endorsed and approved by the board. So I do acknowledge it is a sharp increase, but in order to get us there, the primary revenue element of the Equestrian Center is that horse boarding fee. So the only really way you're going to make an impactful change is to change that horse boarding fee. Likewise, dry stalls, if anybody's curious as to that. So a dry stall is an instance where if you are currently boarding a horse and for whatever reason you don't have a horse actually actively in that stall, we charge you a different fee. And the reason for that would be clearly we don't have staff going out and giving the horse the feed. There's no maintenance from that, but ultimately it is a holding charge, right? So if your horse was going to be gone for a couple months for whatever reason and you don't want to give it up, we're still going to apply a very similar charge to hold that fee, that stall for you. So that fee is going from $150 to $246. I should have said at the top of the order that all the green highlighted rows are where you'll see the changes. I didn't notice this until now, that there is one 3/4 of the way down the page where it says shavings per bag goes from $8.50 to $10. That should have been highlighted in green as well. The other area of some charges is going from your lessons. So I mentioned earlier the various fees for the lessons. They're increasing from, for instance, a lesson for a 45-minute fee on a GRF horse is increasing to $55, whether you're using a GRF horse or a boarded horse. And then for a non-resident is going to $35, again, regardless of whether you're using a GRF horse or a boarded horse. And then those, again, are the primary charges. For non-residents, you can see down below the very last green highlighted row, boarding fees. Currently, as I mentioned before, it's $325. The proposed increase is to go to $513. And then I will sum up my staff report. Karina, if you can turn to page 5 of 5, please. So this is a summary of both your revenues up top, your expenses in the middle of the page, and some of the proposals down below. You can see on the 2025 budget column, which is the third column from the right, that we're looking at right now. $215,000 is budgeted to be brought in terms of total revenue, and then a total cost of $941,000, and that is where we're currently getting the 19% recovery. If we were to get an approval from this committee here, and it was approved later on by the board, overall you would see an increase of about $70,000 coming into the budget, which would bring you to the cost recovery of the 30%, which is what we're looking for. So somewhat shorter than my previous staff presentations, just less elements feeding into it, and I will pause here for any questions that. And we also have members of Recreation that will be able to assist with any questions that would come up.
Just a procedural question in terms of, does this come before us and then go to CAC, or does it?
Thank you for that question. Yes. So it is clearly here. The next step will be going to CAC, and I had wrote down that date in my mind. I want to say it's in early October is the next CAC meeting.
So that that we are not passing on the question, that, for example, of eliminating the trail rides. That's the CACs. We're looking at the money.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Nikki?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. According to the discussion section on the page 105, the last segment, demands for lessons have significantly increased in recent years. However, if you look at the table, the attachment 2, page 5, can you put that table in there? The budget, page 5 of 5, line item 43502500, horse lesson fee resident. 2025 budget is set up $33,000, which is way less than 2024. Is there any reason for that? Well, we know that we are raising the fee, so that was the figure before raising the fee, but the demands for the lesson has been increased. Why we need to set up that that's revenue already, right? From 2024 budget, $57,600, but it's cut to $33,000.
It's a great question. Give me just a moment, and I will have our staff pull up the actual revenue from 2023 and 2024 were. So I believe ultimately from 2020, you got it ready?
Yeah, for 2023, the actual revenue was 115,000.
Okay.
Okay, 2024, what was that? So far, we have not finished our year yet.
Sure,
We don't
we'll
have
get that
it
number
yet?
here momentarily.
Okay.
I understand that to be that instead of $43,200, it was 100 and something or other? Is that right?
From an actual perspective, correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay. Did we get an answer to the question?
Yeah,
Okay.
as soon as we get the answer, our staff is looking it up, and they'll text us, and I'll
We're
get
still
a
waiting
response
for
shortly.
it.
Sue?
I had a number of questions, and let me just give you a couple of examples. If you look under 2025 budget on page 5 of 5, and the last item is miscellaneous for $215,640, and then the total is $215,640. How can the total of that column
Sure.
be the same as the last entry? And then there's a double asterisk in the next section under insurance estimate. And it has so the double asterisk, there's nothing that defines what the double asterisk means for insurance estimate. So that's just a couple of examples, but I think somebody needs to go over this pretty carefully.
Sure. So by the time it comes over to the CAC, we'll have both those updated to make certain that before it goes to the board, it'll be a full disclosure. But yes, the insurance element is this specific one. It has to do, it's not all insurance. This has to do with pretty much just the equestrian center. There's other insurances involved that would cover the equestrian center, like for trips and falls, but that's not the insurance that's addressed here. This is specific to the equestrian center. With regards to the miscellaneous, it is a subtotal, but yeah, we'll make certain that that line probably should have been stricken.
So that's going to change all the numbers.
No, the subtotal isn't calculated into the total. See, where it says miscellaneous, ultimately that line should have been just removed. So we'll go ahead and make certain that is addressed when we bring it before the CAC and again before the board.
So that entire line is incorrect?
The miscellaneous
the
is
numbers?
a subtotal of the, oh, forgive me.
Miscellaneous?
Forgive me, actually, there's nothing wrong with it. So let me go ahead and just look at the total. If you start off at the top, so we're going to go down to the fourth row where it says miscellaneous.
Yeah.
So everything below that miscellaneous, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 6 lines that make up the miscellaneous. And that miscellaneous that's indented, that is the subtotal of the 6 rows preceding it. So if you were to take the clubhouse rentals and event fees, the broadband services, plus that miscellaneous subtotal, they'll add to the total that's bolded. What we should have done differently is maybe just either put it as an italicized number or something along those lines. From a formatting perspective, we'll make it a little more clear on the next round. But all the numbers that are included are correct.
Okay. I'm interested to hear some of the comments.
We have another,
So that row should have been total miscellaneous then.
Yeah, we probably should have said subtotal next to it.
Question I have for Allison and her staff. How do you determine between beginner and advanced with regards to trail riding? Is it like doing the 5 or 6 lessons? Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm Laura. I'm the senior equestrian supervisor. So in terms of riding, the advanced people really can walk, trot, canter, and they would be able to stay on if something happened and a horse spooked. There's a lot of dangers now on our trails that didn't used to exist. We have a lot of landscape vehicles going in and out with trailers that bounce around the park that is next to our trail system. We've had a lot of issues with loose dogs charging the fences. In addition to that, if you go the other direction on the trails, I don't know if everyone is familiar, I apologize, with the trail system, but
So it's your judgment.
it is, yeah, absolutely. And I have, professional experience going back to the 2000.
Thank you.
all right? We have a member from the public?
Yes, Director Leonard.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back to my resident member question. How many members do we have that own horses at the equestrian center?
How many are currently boarding? I believe we have 26.
20.
So
Oh,
Well, but, I mean,
So-
look, let's get back to our definition. Residents are owners who live here.
no, residents are people who live here, members own.
I believe they own and
sure.
live here for the most part. I don't personally track whether they're leasees or owners.
Correct.
There
So
are no people boarding there that just own a property and do not reside there.
There you
Right.
go. I'm sorry, that was what I was headed for.
yeah, thank you. And when I looked this up, probably 3 months ago, this may have changed, probably not, but could have changed. When I looked it up, I think we had 26 owners, and then we had 3 that were non-owners but were sponsored. But those 3 may be residents, like they may be lessees. I don't really recall. So, but by and large, the majority are owners.
Well, I just see an identifying between a resident and a member. A resident lives here, but a member pays the GRF fee. So they pay the HOA fee, correct? if you're renting, you don't pay that GRF. You pay rent to the member, right? Yeah, the owner pays, which is the member. Okay, I want to make that comment. I think it'd be nice to know, if you could get that information for me, how many members have horses?
Sure.
I'd appreciate it, Steve.
Absolutely.
I'll also look for the information you were going to get me before about the insurance, the liability insurance for the manager, Laura. She carries a $3 million liability policy. She stated it in one of the meetings, and you said you'd get back to me.
Okay, and forgive me, what is the specific question?
I wanted to know why that's not on the list of expenses. You have insurance estimate of $55,000. I'd like to see an insurance estimate of whatever for the liability. Let's get to some full disclosure.
Sure, so we don't put, so this is the cost, right? The $55,000 is the cost of that insurance? What the coverage is clearly much, much higher. So quite possibly that $55,000 is the $3 million insurance coverage. Okay. But I would have to have Dan Yost, our risk manager, identify that unless Laura has some comments.
Okay.
Yes, we're currently in the renewal process for the insurance. Pardon me. That is part of the trail riding issue, is that trail riding is the most expensive thing to cover in equestrian insurance. So, so that was an issue, but the company does not pay for me to have a $3 million policy. Any outside clinicians that come in have a $3 million policy they're required to have. Plus, they name Golden Rein as an additional insured. So I'm not sure where you misunderstood that, but the company did not purchase a $3 million policy for me. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you. So,
Does that address that question?
okay, that one, yes.
Okay.
I have one other question regarding trailer, storing trailers on the equestrian center lot, and that is $160 a month. How many trailers do we have stored there?
Sorry, Laura, I'm going to defer to you a little bit more.
A year. Okay, a year. Correct. Stand corrected. It's $160 a year.
I did not bring my billing sheet with me, so I could be wrong within 1 or 2 trailers, but I believe it's 7.
I thought I saw one at the RV lodge, a horse trailer. So hopefully they're paying RV rates, because $160 is cheap for a year, because I pay at the RV lot $320 or $360. So are we not looking at raising that fee?
We're evaluating the RV spaces as well.
Okay, it didn't look like it was on the column for evaluation.
Oh, gotcha, from a trailer perspective?
Yes.
So, no.
Okay. Are you going to? Like this year?
For this year, we are not. So, but we will take into consideration for future evaluations.
Okay, but board, you can make decisions here as well, directors. You don't have to approve what you see. You can make decisions. You can challenge some of it.
That, of course, is why we're here, right?
Right. I hope you hear. I hope you listen.
But just for purpose of clarification, is the issue that you're raising that you don't think $160 per year is enough for storing a horse trailer at the equestrian center? Okay. All right. Phil.
Yeah, I just want to give a piece of information here. On June 17th of this year, there were 27 horses boarded that were from the members. Actually, there was one from Mutual 50. There were 9 in Third. 9 members of Third had horses there. And United had 17 there, but 4 of them were non-resident, sponsored by the resident. So that was as of June 17th of this year.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. Next.
We had a comment from Nancy Carlson.
everybody again.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I want to comment about the equestrian center. I want to talk about the shared cost for a second. And it's really a point of information. November 6, 2012, Resolution 90-12-132, Golden Rain Foundation Operating Rules. It says guidelines for sharing costs. There are exceptions to the shared cost concept, where only a small number of residents are allowed access to the facility, or the GRF determines the fees would be appropriate to help offset costs and reduce assessments. GRF may impose a fee to recover certain costs of operating that facility. Now, what we know, excuse me, the mic, coming up too soon, is that we have ballpark 26 horses over there, whether they're tenants or owned by members. We have 18,600 residents. This is a facility that technically is a business, not really an amenity. You can't say that 26 horses that are there, owned by these people, are personal property. You may not ride them, you may not rent them, frankly, you may not go up and touch them. That's personal property of someone else. It's like your car in a garage. That's your car, your asset. You have a boat, that's an asset, that's your personal property. We're proposing charging $400 a month and going to underwrite the expenses of the entire equestrian center on the residents, the members rather, members, at 81%. That doesn't make sense. The competitive rate for boarding, I think most of you know that I've had horses for years, in South Orange County is about $13.50 a month based on the fee schedule and setup you're talking about. That doesn't include a rental figure for the tack room or horse trailer storage. And if you don't know what tack is, it's the bridles, the saddles, all the stuff, the accoutrement that go with the riding. And you have to store it someplace unless you want to ferry it back and forth in the trunk of your car. So right now, a standard comparable in South Orange County, I pulled this up today, is $13.15. And we're proposing increasing the fee. I recommend you do not approve the fee schedule. I think we have work to do on that. But most fundamentally, I recommend that we do not accept an 81% underwriting by the members of the entire village for ballpark 26 horses that can't be ridden by the residents. Now, that leaves the school horses, which is my definition of a school horse. It's basically what Laura was describing. All the other horses can be used something else. The last meeting, as I recall, and Laura can correct me on that, X number of those horses need to be retired, aren't fit for lessons, and so on and so forth. So I don't know what it nets down to, maybe 5, 7 horses. I know she has said that she had 2 horses over there. So that, you see how this narrows down? We're really talking about horses that 18,600 people can use is more like in the figure of it's less than 10. And what's the overall budget for the equestrian center? You have to look at how much money that's costing. And now you want the residents to pay 81% of that. That is a gift to anybody who has a horse. I said this last time is sort of metaphorically. Boy, I'm a lucky girl if I bring a horse over here and I get underwritten by $37,000 or $40,000. It's a gift to me. That's what you're giving me, at least. So that's my proposal. I don't feel you should approve these fees, and I think we need to take a serious look, based on the resolution that supports this, what the shared cost is, because we don't have to do shared costs. There are exceptions. And I do maintain that this is a business, and the people who are boarding here need to pay the rate for boarding. And that's from an equestrian.
Thank you.
Chair Cohen, if I can just make some clarifications
Yes,
real quick.
Steve.
So, Director Carlson, thank you for the comment. So just from a clarification perspective, what the committee here is approving is to take the approved board budget of 81% and changing it to a 70% recovery. So actually, yes. So currently, as the budget stands right now, if fees were to remain unchanged, you would have an 81% subsidy by the community and 19% recovery through fees. With an increase in the fees that's proposed here in this schedule, you would go from a 19% fee recovery to a 30% recovery, meaning you're charging more to the residents. So this would be, I think, down the direction of a less subsidy from the residents with an increase in fees.
Well, and to reiterate my point, more fundamentally is, why are we sharing costs on this for 10 horses, less than 10 horses? And underwriting this is a gift to people who have 10 horses. And on top of it, they should be paying the going rate. And why are we in that business?
And I don't want to, I'm not debating this at the moment.
My net point is, the shared costs, it doesn't make sense. The fee schedule, if for some reason everyone says, no, we're going to keep it and we're going to have all the members pay this per month, 18,600 people are going to pay it, and you can't use these horses. And we've just diminished what they could use. We've taken trail rides out. That's a tough argument to sell to membership if this was starting today. And what we have to do is we have to think about how we're spending our money and what we're asking residents to underwrite, or members to underwrite. I want to be clear about that. I am distinguishing residents versus members, because residents can be tenants. And they can have horses over here and say, this is the best deal in the country. And it would be, no doubt, the best deal in the country.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Richard Rader?
Before we have Mr. Rader come up, Jennifer Murphy is online and she had a comment as well.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to comment on regards to the trail rides. I wanted to clarify that trail rides would still be available to boarders who were to do self-guided trail rides. So what you're looking at is that staff will no longer lead trail rides. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody. Thank you.
I believe Mr. Rader was up next, so.
Dick Rader, 270D. I just have a general question. If I recall correctly, golf is 65-35,
Correct.
and this is 70-30?
In the opposite direction, correct.
Pardon?
In the opposite direction.
Proposed, right? How does that compare to?
No, 81's the old thing.
I think the question you're asking, golf is 65 to the user.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I
Correct.
didn't finish my question.
No,
I'm
I'm
being interrupted by the audience. Can you please control the audience?
Yes, sir, I'll be happy to. Please, and I spoke as well, so please complete your question.
Okay. If I read it correctly, it says that this is a 70-30 split proposed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So
I'm
so
sorry. That was the board resolution, correct?
overall?
Yes.
Okay. So my general question is this. It's actually two parts. How do we come up with these different ratios, and how does it compare to other percentages? Do you have some thought on that?
I do. So the directive was to reevaluate all the fees. So, and as part of, once that fee review is completed, which is going to take 2 to 3 years to get through all the various fees, then we would come back and take a look across the board for all the fees and come up with a recommendation to the board whether you want to maintain differences between, or if you want to unify all the, again, that's going to be a separate discussion. As we're discussing here, we're focusing on one fee at a time. So we're following the board resolution of this 70-30 split. And if I can just add one more comment, because you compared this to golf. Golf is, and Director Cohen was correct, golf is subsidized by the residents, or excuse me, paid for by the residents 65%. Per the resolution for equestrian, it's 30% paid for by the residents, by the users.
But do you have any, give me any idea what some of the other splits are?
Sure, they kind of go all over. It's in the green book for anybody to see the previous years, and it ranges, right? So the pools and transportation is 0. So golf is, RVs is 100% subsidized or paid for by the users. And there's reasons for that, partly because, and that's part of our discussion here in terms of the fee reviews. The costs are pretty low, right, from a golf perspective.
I'm not talking about some of the exceptions,
RVs.
though, in general.
In general,
what would
most
you
things
say?
are probably closer to the 70-30 split, consistent with.
So this is not the highest one?
This is by no means the oddity. This is more in line with the other shared costs.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Any other further comments?
Cynthia Rupert.
Good afternoon to all. I have a couple of questions and comments. I'm in 165A, and of course, I'm also a director on VMS board, but I'm speaking as a member owner. First off, I would like to know where the evaluation for non-member / non-resident where have those fees been analyzed? As I know, Director Carlson commented on other fees in Orange County. From all my past experience, we are so low as to be almost ridiculous. Even raising it to $400 is just, to me, absurd based on the costs that are incurred, especially as mentioned for the limited number of horses available to our actual members and residents to use, not the ones owned individually. But because there's such a low percentage of what are actually available, I don't understand why the fees are so low for regular boarders here. I understand subsidizing those horses that residents, members can use to take lessons. But as far as the others go, I just don't understand why that's such a huge subsidy. We don't have access to those. When you play golf, we have access to golf. When you go swimming, we have access to the pools. We do not have that same situation here. But one, I suggest that that's reevaluated. Two, I question that 70-30 split. So I again wish that would be looked at. And the last thing I'm going to say are trail rides. I have had more comments come to me about trail rides being eliminated. They are currently, despite what some people might think, a selling point in our amenities. They are on our website. I know realtors that have commented to me about their concerns because that is one of their selling points. They actually use the amenities and especially equestrian center, which is an unusual amenity. And if that's eliminated, that's one of our core amenities that has been here for forever that is just being wiped off. So again, I ask that the committee consider the costs involved and keep the trail rides in, even if we have to increase the insurance or liability. That should be discussed instead of just wiping them off. Thank you for my time.
Thank you.
Stephen Leonard.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I decided to download a copy of this last night, and I spent about 3 hours going over the numbers because it was so confusing and very difficult for me, which is not normally the case. I'm usually able to look at documents and go, oh, yeah. And I also want to say that I'm going to take more than 3 minutes. So as a director, I'm going to try to exercise some privilege here, which is commonplace in other committees. Regarding the numbers that were presented, the sheet, I'm just surprised at how bad it is. And I apologize to you, Steve, and to Jose, because generally speaking, the work that comes down from your office is spectacular. I looked at this, I was so confused, I didn't understand what was happening here. The 2025 budget, then down below, there's no explanation of this is how we're going to get to the 70-30. It was just all over the place. It took me a long time to get to. In the staff report, when they talk about raising the fee for the stall to $410, I'm going to read this again. From $265 to $325 for non-residents. Okay, and then it said that included 3 bags of shavings a week, but we really needed 5, and people were paying for 2 extra bags a week at $7.50 a bag, which is $15 a week. Times 4 weeks is $60. So if you're taking this up, $60 of the raise is shavings. That's not raising the fee for the stall. You're giving them $60 worth of savings. Follow me here? This is $1 million. $941,000 for this recreational activity. And as I went through it and I started to do, when I could understand it, to do the analysis, even if you get to the 30%, you're talking about an expense here of $600,000 to the rest of the residents. I don't find that acceptable. I really don't. And having had some experience in dealing with horses from my ex, used to ride in San Juan Capistrano, know what the costs over there were, bought horses in New Zealand, brought them here and trained them and sold them. So I do know a little bit about equestrian. I'm not an expert. I'm not a writer. Okay? But there's something terribly wrong with this 620 department. We are way out of line with this, as I think the other people have said as well. The amount of the facility that is available to our members, as opposed to people who are boarding their horses here, that only they have control over and only they can ride. I'm sorry, but this just doesn't work for me as a director. Thank you.
Thank you.
Georgiana Willis.
I agree with everything that they're saying. I think this is outrageous. And I don't even see why we even have it. I know we're not dependent upon selling condos. It's not necessary to have an equestrian center. Some people may have moved here for that reason, but it would be very few. But this expense is falling on the backs of a lot of people who've been maybe retired for 35 or 40 years. And so, especially for something like this, which is more like a private club, I don't understand that. You've got 26 horse owners who have 7.5 employees working for them, plus all the insurance and all the other costs, because some of the insurance was not included here, and I think there's one that's more expensive. But basically, it's not just on the equestrian center. I heard that golf was going up $1. Again, it's a shared cost thing too. So if you're only going up $1 a year when you've already got a low price, and I heard it was going from 16 to 17 per game or something, I don't know. But again, it's going on the backs of people who, for the most part, are not using it, since we've got 1,200 golfers, and maybe 200 come from our guests or something like that. So, but I don't see any justification for maintaining this expense. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Kwam.
Yes, thank you. How much of our per manor per month goes to the equestrian center?
About $475.
So 475. What is comparable to that for $4.75? When I looked at it, it looked like it was like the second or third highest.
Correct. So I'm looking at and forgive me for I don't have this to present to everybody on screen, but we have in the business plan under the recreation section in the very, very back, we have a shared cost percentages. So golf is the highest at a 35% shared cost, and then aquatics. So to answer your question directly, performing arts. So you subsidize about $3.75. That's the closest one to the $4.75 equestrian. Next closest one is aquatics, which is about $6.70. These are their 2024 numbers.
Okay, thank you very much. I really love the concept of the horses and the beauty of the equestrian center. I think that's very, very nice, but it is not fair how this has been distributed and the fact that very few people really can access this unless they want to take riding lessons, which I'm told can take a while to even get in. So I agree with the people that have spoken. And are they now projected to pay 65% of their costs, or are we subsidizing 65% of their costs?
Thank you for the question. Again, referring back to the original resolution that is currently in force, 30% of the cost is to be recovered through fees. And that is what this fee recommendation would achieve that.
I think it should be at least double, if not more. But, that's just off the cuff. We need more study, in my opinion.
Sure. And if I could remind, the question was brought up before in terms of is that 30% the appropriate shared cost? And that broader discussion will be discussed at a later time. The purpose of this discussion here was just to be focusing on the fees. Again, there's a resolution in place that says a 30% is supposed to be recovered through fees from the users, and that's what we're making the recommendation here. The recommendation from staff is at this time, we're not discussing whether this committee here should be voting on whether or not equestrian should stay or go. That's not what is being brought forward. This is purely just to discuss the fees and how to raise it to the level that would achieve the resolution that's in place. If a discussion wants to be held in another forum, that might be appropriate. But again, we're here to discuss the fees by themselves.
Thank you.
Yes.
So it was brought up that not all shared costs are equal, okay? And I'm not familiar with the resolution that was brought forth, that not all of our recreation facilities necessarily have to be shared costs. Is that true?
Correct. So for instance...
So there could be the equestrian center could stand on its own, and that the users, because of the limited access to every member in this community, does not have access to that and can never have access. Much more limited than pickleball, much more limited than tennis, much more limited than golf, and so on and so forth, to the extreme that this may be a recreational facility that would be an exception and needs to be looked at for an entirely different fee schedule.
Again, so we're just sticking with the resolution. I acknowledge what you're saying here. It's a similar comment to the other people in the audience. I would equate the closest thing I can think of that the equestrian center would be associated with from a limited access perspective would be both the RV spaces as well as the garden centers. So they're different, those two. The RV spaces, because they're such low cost, 100% is recovered from fees. But the garden centers, again, you have a much smaller group that have access to the garden centers. So
Garden
again,
centers have access over 1,000 people.
correct, but
And
again,
this has basically
sure.
a couple of dozen at best, 3 dozen, less than 3 dozen, but closer to 2 dozen, and can never have any more.
But the,
And
I
they can
don't
never
wanna-
have any more. They just can't.
If I-
And so
if I may,
the,
the broader question of whether or not we should have an equestrian center as an amenity for this community is appropriate to be raised. I think it would start with CAC.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be there. I'm just saying that it needs to be on a separate schedule from the overall general schedules, because we do have an exception, and this is one of them. And that's all I'm saying, is that, and these fees do not even come close to reflecting reality. I mean, golf doesn't either, but that's a separate issue. But this is just even far and away a schedule that, as was brought up by Ms. Carlson, basically a giveaway to a minority club that you need to own a horse to be in. And that's not the way this community was set up.
Okay, I'm going to take a shot at this. Okay, we got GRF horses, and we got resident horses, and we got non-resident horses, right? Now, the GRF horses, we got to pay 100% of that. GRF does, right? The resident horses, that's what we're trying to kind of figure out the share cost thing, 65, 35, whatever, 70, 30. But the non-resident horses, shouldn't they be paying 100% of that cost? Yes. And tallying it all up, where are we at? That's all I got to say. Oh, I like the equestrian center. I think it's an amenity that's, I think it adds property value. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a few comments, and then I'd like to make a motion. First of all, the cost recovery, we're talking operations only, correct? Not reserve.
Correct.
So you also have, in the next 5 years, about $133,000 slated for reserves, and then future reserves are, $500,000 or so, if I saw it correctly. So just to point out, it's not just operating where money's going in. I know it's our assets, but
I would
it's
just
still
in response to that, from a reserve perspective, you capture the reserve through the depreciation, so that is taken into consideration.
Right. Secondly, the operating budget from 2020 till the proposed has gone up 61% since 2020. Just to give you an idea on that kind of thing. We're talking about, we've talked about how limited the members are to use the equestrian center. And we cannot commit future boards, GRF boards, I understand that. But I think we need a gradual shift in the cost recovery part of this. Not trying to do away with the equestrian center, but to change the financial scheme. And that leads me to this motion. And just to remember, this is a recommendation to the GRF board. This is not cast in stone. It's what this committee would be recommending. So I move that the recommendation to the GRF board for the equestrian center cost recovery, meaning what the boarders of the horses would pay. So I move that the recommendation to the GRF board for the equestrian center cost recovery for 2025 be 40%, for 2026 be 60%, and for 2027 be 70% until modified by the GRF board. I.e., that basically means the shared cost for 2025 would be 60% of all the members of Laguna Woods Village, and the cost recovery 40%. In 2026, all the members would be paying 40%, and in 2027, they'd be paying 30%. That's my motion. And I need a second.
I'll second that for you, Tom.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
What does that do to the numbers?
If I can bring up Laura to maybe add some color to that.
Okay.
Would it be okay, thank you, directors, if I go back and educate you all a little bit based on some of the comments that were said before? I think we're looking at things not from an equestrian business perspective, and I think I can give you some idea of how equestrian centers on the outside typically make money, really, and pay for themselves. Is that okay? Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so when we analyzed the numbers here, I worked with Steve and his team, we did look at neighboring facilities. So I'm not sure where Director Carlson, with her very pretty scarf, got her numbers, but when you're looking at facilities that are in the $1,200 and $1,300 range, you're talking about Olympic-type facilities that are open to everyone and that include the cost of hay and services in the boarding fee. So that's a full-service boarding that it is. And we looked at primarily neighboring barns of Nellie Gale, Serrano, and Codo, Nellie Gale being an HOA also that has run their facility with a pretty successful model. So when I came on in 2020, it was sort of failing as a dude ranchy sort of, everybody just come and hop on a horse. Nobody wanted to board there. People pay a lot of money for horses now. So you want to have your horses in an environment where they can train and ride sort of without a lot of chaos and the danger of before. We used to have a lot of injuries previously as well. So we took it in that direction, the successful direction of the Nellie Gale model, which I'm really familiar with because that's the type of facility I've run for a very long time. And the way that you look at typically the revenue at equestrian centers is that you try to recoup as much as possible on boarding, and you actually make the majority of your revenue through lessons. Now, what's cut us off at the knees here to some degree is that our lesson fees are so low that we're unable to function in the typical model. Also, unlike our neighboring facilities of Codo and Nellie Gale, they are very open to outside people with a higher fee, like you suggest, a higher fee. Anybody can come in that wants to train there and use that facility. There's no discussion of they shouldn't be there. That's part of our revenue. That's how we make our model work. And the lessons are at market rate. Now, you'll never go anywhere outside of here and pay less than $75 to sit on a horse, any horse. And that is Orange County Regional, and it is a very, very low-end riding program. Now, we definitely need then to move ours towards that direction and to achieve the same results, which is something that's sustainable. So, but when you look at boarding, when I came in 2020 to the Equestrian Ad Hoc Committee, I recommended that we incrementally raise the fees of boarding every year, like most facilities do, so that we wouldn't arrive at a place later on where when materials go up, we're in such a situation that we are now. But we are not in a place where we offer a facility that is more attractive than those neighboring facilities. So when you look at Nellie Gale, that charges $680 and includes hay, some hay in that cost, and you're looking at our boarding fee, when you guys are looking at boarding as a boarding by itself, that one line item, you're not looking at the fact they're also paying the hay per feeding per month. So what's actually coming out of this would be that people would be paying between 7 something and 800 a month. They're not actually only going to be paying for 10. Right now, they are paying about 460 something is the average for residents per month. So it's a huge jump that we're proposing. And I would think, and it's right there under Nellygale, and Nellygale actually has some portions of their facility that are more attractive because they can work in the rain, they have a little bit better footing, they have mirrors on their dressage court, they have lighting that's better. All of these things, some taken care of in our upcoming capitals that were already approved, but we're not quite there yet. So I hope that kind of helps a little bit. If we're targeting 60 lessons a week, now this year we've been short-staffed on one of our part-time instructors, but going into next year, if we're targeting 60 lessons a week, and we encourage both residents and their sponsored grandchildren and so forth to take lessons, and they're paying $75 a lesson, we're looking at a huge increase in revenue on lessons, which is where the burden usually goes. So that's sort of the thinking behind this that we talked about and where we're trying to arrive. And then from my perspective, if you want my perspective, if we then continue to incrementally raise at a smaller percentage every year, we then get up into those higher numbers. But even with this jump, a lot of our residents on fixed incomes that have had horses here for 20 some odd years, boarded, they may not be able to afford to stay. So they may have to move over to Serrano or one of the other low-end facilities. And we're trying to maintain the mid-range with good quality everything, but not over the top. So I hope that helps. So let me address a few of the things that were mentioned that might be.
If I could ask a quick question on what you've
Sure.
already said. I understand you'd be saying that, like Nellygale, if they have a horse boarding fee of something.
$680.
$680. And that includes what?
That includes 3 flakes of hay and the base bedding. So people do buy some extra bedding, and the cleaning and the feeding of horses.
So that if we were going to try to draw an equivalence, we would have to take the 410 here that is being proposed and add to it some of these other items.
But our hay is separate. So you have to take our horse boarding fee and add, if you look down the line, to the hay, the horse feed, alfalfa hay, tough hay, orchard hay, Timothy hay right there. So per feeding per month, they pay that fee. So if you look at the majority of horses eat Timothy. So you would take the 410 plus the Timothy hay times 2 or 3, depending on the number of feedings they get. And that's the actual number they're paying for board.
Thank you. Let's proceed.
Okay. So with the limited number of stalls we have, so our facility is a little bit at a disadvantage on trying to blow out boarding to be a big revenue source because we have a limited number of stalls. So where you look at Codo that has hundreds of horses, they're able to make up that cost in bulk, some of it, and Nellygale has 100 something. We're only at 40 stalls. So when we're trying to provide the community with lessons in volume, or we're trying to bring in boarders, we only have 40 stalls to work with. So we're limited in that capacity. So we have to be smart about how we try to achieve our goals, and really staying at market on the lessons is going to be the most palatable. And I'm not disagreeing with these fees, but I'm saying to help us in addition to these fees to raise the lesson fees.
Now, you got a pretty big backlog in lessons too, don't you?
We do, and we have a number of people. I mean, we'll still have a waiting list.
It's like months, right?
Yeah, several months.
That's
waiting
money.
list.
It's money in the bank.
That's right, and only now serious people, not just people who want to come on once, then will likely come and take lessons ongoing. So we'll have guaranteed lessons going on at these higher rates, which is what we like to have. And then we reserve a portion of lessons for people that want to come in for a short time and just experience riding. And then, so that is what we're trying to accomplish, or the way we're looking at it, just to take away any confusion on sort of how the model works. So just to address a few comments here, there is no additional expense for insurance. We're right now in the renewal process. Dan Yost will go through all that, I'm sure, at the CAC, but I was part of that, and I know there was some question, but there is one insurance fee. It actually should be going down. So you guys can look forward to that at that meeting. Let's see, what did I not cover? Actually, I really covered most of it. The other thing is the expenses going up. Materials have gone up across the board. Inflation is not limited to any one area. So when you look at our expenses going up, you have to remember that everything costs more in the world right now. So if there's the pipe and the pipe corral and the feed and a rake that you have to buy or a wheelbarrow, everything has been more expensive. So it's not a spending thing, it's an inflation overall situation. And that was really, and the shavings. We are not adding 2 additional shavings into the boarding fee. The way that was calculated is the dry stall fee. So that's a stall without shavings. Commonly in this area is about $350, $300 at the base. So we took, because we were so low before, the $300, and then we added the cost of shavings on top of that to arrive at the $410. So we're no longer losing money out of our base rate by including shavings in that cost. That was it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually, if I may, before Ms. Carlson comes up, Cynthia's been waiting with her hand up for some time.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Thank you, Steve. I have like 4 things to quickly cover as I can. 1, what is the definition of a user? I keep hearing this user, but there are 2 types of users we have. We have those resident members that have horses stabled there that are paying these regular boarding fees. And then we have users that are other community members or residents that want to use the facilities. And of course, that's a limited amount of horses available for that. So I'm curious about how that definition of user falls into this budgeting process. Second, the backlog for lessons is over a year. So to say that that's a way of, in any way, an amenity right now, it's laughable. I mean, I've had residents go up there to try to get a lesson, and they literally were told it's over a year. Sign up, wait. Next, let's talk about the cost for lessons. Okay, again, that is part of our amenity. So why that should be at a full cost and not subsidized in any way, I don't understand. If we can have people in here board their horses for way under the normal fee, regardless of whether it's Orange County or Coda or anywhere else, we can't carry this all the way down. I'm very confused about how the process of where we're recovering costs is coming from. And I'll bring the last one up, which is trail rides. I hear more and more about trail rides being eliminated. Okay, that is a source of revenue that we're eliminating that would help cover some of these costs. It has been a highly requested amenity that I understand now people are trying to get rid of, and I understand the liability. But if there is a liability, why aren't we addressing a way to overcome that liability? Changing the trail rides, fixing the trail rides, doing something that will help keep that revenue going. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, are we Steve, did you want to say that?
So that gets back to the three different types of horses, GRF, member owning, and then non-member owning, and what we're having to pay for the three, like what she was saying. But I think there's still going to be trail rides.
Well, let me, can I address some of this?
Yeah, just a second. I just wanted to clarify, though, on the motion, the staff wants to go from 19 to 30, but you're recommending 40, and next year 50,
40,
and the following
60,
60,
40, 60, 70.
and we don't really have the numbers on 40 and 50 and 60 to observe.
So if I could just respond to that question. So with regards to, the math wouldn't be too challenging. So if, right now the 410 is at 30%. So if you divide that by 3, add 10, it would come up to
Times
roughly
4.
500 and some odd dollars. We can just apply that. So ultimately what would happen, the question came up before, how will this progress, this recommendation? If the GRF Finance Committee were to, say, approve either staff's recommendation, an alternative motion of any kind, it would then go to CAC with an endorsement from GRF Finance, and then it would progress to the board. So ultimately, before it moved on, I would go ahead and put together a fee that would accommodate any other resolution that came up, excuse me, not resolution, but motion that came up, and then detail it before it went to CAC.
So going from 19 to 40, you're like doubling the price overnight.
It would double from the 265, correct.
Yeah.
So simply double, yeah, you're correct. Rather, that's a simpler approach. So 265 times 2 is 5 1/4.
I just wanted us to know what
Right, if I
numbers
may,
we're
though,
dealing with.
there really, I mean, there are two different things that we're talking about. There is a board resolution in place specific to the equestrian center that calls for this 70-30 split. And the staff has brought forth a fee structure that accomplishes the 70-30 split that is in the current board resolution from whenever it's from. So that the motion that is currently before us is whether we should be recommending to the board that they change the split in the resolution, whatever the resolution is, to call for a fee share of 40% for next year, 60% I think it was for 2026, and 70% for 2027, which is actually a different matter than what is immediately before us, which is, do we approve of this fee schedule that accomplishes the parameters that the board has put forth? So they're two separate things. It's not that we can't talk about them, but we need to think about them separately. And right now, the motion is on putting forth a recommendation to change the structure, the split, right? Do you have the resolution number of that?
It's the one I gave you earlier.
Well, the one that establishes the 70-30 split.
Oh,
The
yeah,
resolution number, no, but I'll grab it.
Okay.
Yeah, but in essence, to add to that very point, Director Cowan, is that I presented, and Steve acknowledged, that we have in the rules that we do not have to have a split. So do understand that that is an item too. Now, you're talking or considering, it's going to be 70-30, 60-40. We're going to have an escalation clause, how that all works. But I'm also reminding you that we are not bound, based on the rules, that the board can say, what we need to do is we need to have 100% recovery and run this as a business for anybody who's boarding here.
Right.
And how we deal with our, what I call school horses, which we trail riding horses or lesson horses, whatever. The school horses, which are less than 10, and I understood from Laura, and the numbers don't necessarily matter, but several of them need to be retired, and they shouldn't be here anymore, and they need to go off. So even if that comes down to 7 horses, you can see what a near limited function that we have here. So one of the questions is, do we want to be in a business where we're having our horses only here, and we're doing trail riding and all lessons and all of that? But that's not a decision for today or in this committee. But that, you can see where it is. Part of the issue is here is this is an activity that's a business. And we don't always understand that, because tennis is obvious, pickleball is obvious, shuffleboard is obvious. This is complex. The I pulled the statistics from today. So what I was citing in board, I took the base. San Juan Capistrano. I lived there for years, so I know it's a big equestrian community, and some of you may know I had a horse ranch, so I'm familiar with what's involved. And I say that humbly. GRF on November 2nd, 2021, listed the Nellie Gale's fee schedule in there. And the base before the feed was $750 for a box stall. It wasn't $400 or $600 or whatever it is. So it was in the GRF agenda as an item in that agenda. And that was from 2021. Today, San Juan Capistrano Equestrian Center, a basic box stall is $910. Add the feed, 5 portions a month, which is what we talked about before, it's $1350. A premium stall, which is bigger, the base is $1340 starting and $1545. Now you know why I said owning a horse is like owning a boat.
Boat owns you.
Correct. You see all the slogans on the back of the horse? Well, on the horse's rump, people should tattoo in white, cute names too, just like the boat. Bottomless pit. You have to be able to afford a horse. It's not cheap. On top of that base, their trailer, this is current. Office and tack room rental is $550 a month. Trailer storage is $175 a month. So the statistics, these are current. This is to take nothing from staff and believing whatever's Nellie Gale. Remember, Nellie Gale's an association also. So they're financing and underwriting some of that as well. So that's not an apples to apples comparison. So that's why I pulled up a proper equestrian center current rate sheet. That's just to edify all of you. Now, there was one other thing that came about 3 meetings ago, and I sent it all to you, and I put the sheet on there because people are going, what's vaulting? And we have a contract, so this speaks to revenue, Steve. It says a class in vaulting, so on and so forth. Who approved this contract? There's legal questions connected to it and liability questions connected to it, but it's in the essence, do we have on a line item a third-party business in the equestrian center? Is somebody, this business, which is called...
We actually addressed this at a prior meeting.
Yeah, we did, but there was no answer.
I think the answer is that
where is it
we
showing up?
We invited this business here to provide services to our community, and they are also allowed to
Eclipse vaulting, Eclipse vaulters. Are they bringing their horses over?
I don't know.
Are they using our facility for free? What are they paying us?
You're talking about them running a business here. We invited them here. We asked them to come and
Why?
provide this. I don't know. I didn't make the decision. But it is not true that they are running a business here. We invite people here to provide services from time to time in all sorts of areas, and this happens to be one of them. I'm not saying that the issues that you're raising are not worthy of consideration, but we invited them here. We wanted them to provide these services to our community, and they are also allowed to provide the services to, I don't know who, Laura?
Well, I find it interesting if we can't give riding lessons, that we can have horses that are doing vaulting for 10-year-olds. I can't picture too many 55-plus people doing vaulting.
Laura, could you address it?
But you know what? I don't want to digress
this is
because I'm
important.
talking
This
money.
is important because
money.
you're characterizing in a way that I'm not sure aligns with what is happening. So
I'm just trying to focus on the financial aspects of all this, meaning Eclipse vaulters isn't showing up as an inch.
You brought in an issue of an outside business, saying we are allowing an outside business to operate on our property, and I'm saying they are an invitee. We have asked them to come here to provide a service that our members take care of.
And my point is the revenue generated from that showing up recorded in our budget? That was my point.
Can I don't know. So let's ask the person that knows.
But let me just conclude. I'll be done here. But I just wanted to have you all understand about what the current fees and rate. And also, this is just like a simple observation, kind of informative point of fact. When I was riding in Orange County 30, 40 years ago, they were orange groves. When this place was built, this was wide open spaces, so trail rides and all that wasn't a complicated thing. It's much more complicated.
Right.
And Laura, just before you get started talking, just as a general note, Director Carlson, anybody else, so we don't typically talk about contractors. We don't necessarily specify names of our vendors in open session. Save that for closed session, please, on a go-forward basis. And then just to answer that question of whether or not the revenue is included in the financials, all of our contractors that we invite to bring on site, so there's various contract how much the split is from a revenue perspective. So all of that revenue across the board, if whatever that dollar amount may be, is included in the financials. Again, I don't want to go into the depths in terms of how much each vendor contributes, but know that if wherever the revenue is charged, it's included in the financials that are presented before you.
Then
Yes, to clarify, just like anywhere else in recreation, we do invite instructors of various types to provide additional services, also to boost the number of people that are waiting that can get in to lessons, because as you mentioned, people are waiting because our fees are so low, less than the cost of McDonald's, really, for some lessons. Then there are a lot of people that want to get into lessons, and once they have lessons, they want to get back on the list and stay on lessons. So when you're talking about the very long list times, you're talking about people that are repeated lesson people. But we invite instructors in to provide more of a variety and to get a wider number of residents in to participate in activities. And I don't think that differs from anywhere else at the various recreation facilities.
But just one second. I believe, though, when you spoke about this issue the last time, you thought that the characterization of vaulting as gymnastic on horseback was not an accurate description of what we were getting.
So with the residents, we do more of or they do more of a therapeutic type vaulting. So it's a flexibility, balance. There's an exercise portion before being on a walking horse. There are people sidewalking, much like in a therapeutic riding facility. So it's elements of stretching, elements of dance moves. I'm not going to do them here because I don't want to embarrass myself.
But my point being is that there are services that people of a certain age can take advantage of, and they're not, gymnastics on horseback for them.
Right.
Okay, thank you. We need to bring this to a close. Do we have board members want to talk further? We want to call the question.
I just have one
question.
We have been presented with so many numbers, separated out from, we've got boarding, and then we've got hay, and then we've got whatever. But we're hearing that in some places near us, the hay is included. So to sit there and play with all these numbers and figure it out, it sounds like, we've have a motion on the floor about 40%, then 50%, then 60%, which is still on the floor, I believe.
That's the one before.
I don't know that I could even, the 40% I probably could live with. I think we're probably okay, but it sounds like from what we're hearing that we need more numbers that we don't have, such as it sounds like horse trailer boarding isn't $240 a year ordinarily. I mean, that lessons could be more, that there might be other ways for us to help, because I'm a little concerned, since not all the numbers are in a single figure like other people pay elsewhere. I'm a little concerned that if we go to 40 and then 50 and 60, we may price ourselves right out of the market. And there's no way, looking at what we have here and our lack of knowledge, I don't know that we would know that answer. So I think we need more information and explore more possibilities, such as, is it appropriate to be charging more to store your trailer for the year? That sounds like a pretty low price. And things like that. Lessons. You indicated that people pay more money for lessons. So we're only focused today, it seems, upon the boarding fee, when in fact other things could make a huge difference. So I have difficulty voting at all just because of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we got to vote.
Well, we don't necessarily have to vote on 40, 50, 60. Maybe we
That's,
vote on 40.
well, that's the
and-
motion before us, and
Well,
we
it
can
could be
vote it
amended.
up or vote it down, but we have to vote on it, unless it's
We could
withdrawn.
amend
Yes,
it.
sir.
Yeah, the reason the motion's made the way it is to give staff the room to determine what the fees are to get to that point, not to tell them what the fees are going to be and everything. So this motion just changes the shift in the cost recovery, but it's still up to staff to bring the fees back. It doesn't have to be just changing the current ones. It'll be more where they can bring back what they think is the best model for them. But it does change what the members of Laguna Woods Village will be contributing to it.
Dr. Choi?
Yes, just procedurally, I believe that motion is on the floor. So first of all, that we need to whether we're gonna, vote for or against. And then if there is any modified motion and make it new one, because it's very, very complicated. Yeah, with the all calculations, so on, so on.
That sounds like you're calling the question. You're calling the question?
Yes.
Sorry,
Right.
Director Cohen, before you do, there is one member who hasn't yet spoken.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
And that would be Director Bach.
Here's another way of thinking of this. We've been talking about bottom line, what the horse owners might be paying to board, but the top number, whether it's 30% or 40% or whatever, the top number, 30% of what, is calculated at $1,367 a month, right? So if members are paying $410 a month and pay and so on, essentially over the course of the year, they're getting a gift of $11,800. Now, non-members or non-members of GRF that are paying a higher rate, they're getting a gift of $9,600 a year by choosing to board their horse here and getting a stall. Now, nobody moves their horse around frequently. If you have a horse, you leave them in place. And so these are long-term contractual, not necessarily contractual, but they are, in the minds of a horse owner, something that they don't want to change very often. So, gosh, this sounds like a deal to me. $11,800 a year of money saved if I'm a member, and $9,600 a year saved for me if I'm a horse owner who has a stall here. Should these people be getting a 1099 from us? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All
there
right,
is a
call the
question.
question. The motion on the table is whether to recommend to the GRF board that we modify, Steve, you got the resolution number for me?
Forgive me, I was responding to a staff question. Can you restate the question?
The resolution number.
The resolution number is 90-20-20.
Whether we should recommend to the board that we
Rescind?
rescind this portion of the resolution, 90-20-20, and which calls for a 70-30 split, and substitute in its place a call for a 60-40 split in 2025, a 40-60 split in 2026, and a 30-70 split in 2027. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carries. All right, I will entertain, now, now we have to deal with the question, which is actually before us, which is whether to approve staff's recommendation that the fees be increased as proposed by staff to reach the 70-30 split as provided in resolution, whatever it was, 2020.
Didn't we just vacate it?
So, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Didn't we just didn't
There
get
need
there?
No, we did not.
Is there a need for this one?
Because recognizing that if we do not act on this, the fees will remain as they are at an 81-29 split. So,
So this motion did pass the change, so staff would go ahead and That is the endorsement from this committee. We would go ahead and come up with a new fee structure and present it to CAC, accommodating that fee.
The problem we have is that if the GRF board does not accept our recommendation to go to 40, 60, and 70 and keep it at 70-30, they don't have a fee structure to pass, and we'll continue at an 81-29 split. So.
Yeah, so if I continue, ultimately, our recommendation to the board would be, if it doesn't pass, that it would kick it back to committee, whether we can further develop a new revised fee. You are absolutely correct in what you said. So if the board did not accept the resolution that came from the Finance Committee, then yes, the current fees would stay in place. But again, we would have a recommendation to follow through.
Okay. So the question is, do we want to send forward the staff's recommendation at all? No. Well, members of the audience don't get to vote. I will entertain a motion about what we should do with what we came here to do. Anybody want to make a motion?
I believe there was a motion that had been made to accept staff's recommendation that has yet to receive a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I made the motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Just as a point of order, as an alternate, I don't know, unless it's at the discretion of the chair, if Martin, because you're an alternate. So that's why we didn't count your vote in the last meeting.
We may, I mean, if we don't have a second, it's going to be a moot question.
Correct.
No second? Motion fails. All right. So, our next item on the agenda for discussion is the discussion of evaluation of unused property. This was
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Now, Martin may have more recent information than I do, but around July, it looked like the city council was going to follow the state's recommendation to rezone properties that are currently not used and make them zoned for housing, for residential. And so there was a proposed project presented by the city council that would rezone 17 properties for a total of 18 parcels in Laguna Woods Village to allow housing development. All I'm recommending, is that we try and stay ahead of the process, find out what's going on, and in the meantime, let's not delay going ahead and finding out what our properties that they're talking about, the parcels, what they're valued at, because that could take some time. And then that can advise us on how we react to this.
Okay.
Do you have more recent information about it?
I do not. I know of one property near me, and I've reported on that, but I got nothing else, collectively, unfortunately.
Well, there's a map that was developed by the city council or staff that identified well over a dozen properties that they recommended for housing in Laguna Woods Village. Currently,
Director Stevens, I don't want to necessarily argue with you about this, but I think it's almost the reverse of that. I mean, the zoning change certainly impacts Laguna Woods Village, but I don't think it calls for housing. I think we have a member that would like to speak, so we have two.
The zoning proposal through the city for 17 parcels, only 3 of them were in Laguna Woods. And those ones were recommended to go from residential to recreation. There is none of it in the proposal that gives, that even suggests that we put more residential here on Laguna Woods Village. And this has gone through 3 council meetings and an environmental and a parking and whatever. It's down to the last. I mean, you can find that on their website.
So you have more, it sounds like you have more recent information. Then July.
I've been going to the
Council meeting.
council meeting.
Great. Yeah, the
It
map
does-
is scary.
It does not affect us. Before, it affected us. But that's what this new resolution will do when it finally gets through. It will take us out of there, and any, like the portion of the end of Garden Center 1 that was residential, would be made, again, recreation.
What about going ahead with evaluation? If it's not too costly, at least we would know what those portions are worth.
There are a number of portions. We've got a lot of portions. I got a letter
Parcels.
this week from a developer that wants the portion on Moulton, 2 of them next to Clubhouse 6, to develop. So the interest is there, but I don't think the interest, at least,
It's here.
is here on our side. So, but the one with the city is a moot point.
Steve?
Sure. I have a letter that was just forwarded to me that is dated in early August, but based upon the information I'm seeing, this only impacts Garden Center 1, which would be refined as open space recreation. So it doesn't have anything to do with turning into housing. But again, I'm quickly looking at a couple sentences, so it sounds like we can discuss this maybe at a future meeting or maybe a board meeting of some kind. But yeah, it's not going to impact from a housing perspective within GRF.
The other of the 17 were all in Laguna Woods, but not in Laguna Woods Village.
Steve?
So this is finance. We own undeveloped property. To my knowledge, we have no idea what it's worth. The parcel between Clubhouse 7 and this administration building, as an example. There was a discussion of putting forth $45,000 for a study to build more pickleball courts.
Somewhere.
Somewhere,
in Laguna Woods Village.
somewhere. So I think Sue's motion makes a lot of sense, because if we're going to have to start looking at things going forward and what we're going to do with the properties, especially as our finances here continue to change, right? We may, at some point, decide to sell some of our undeveloped property. I'm just saying, you can shake your head no,
I
but
didn't
you
shake my
can't
head
say
no.
what
I'm
another
agreeing
board is
with
going to do. So shouldn't we know, shouldn't we have a current assessment of what parcels we have that are not developed and what the current valuations of those properties are, just as a matter of business for the GRF board? I would urge you to get a second to hers and to hire an official appraiser, pay some money, and let's find out what we got, instead of not knowing what we don't.
Okay. So we have a motion to do what again?
Obtain professional evaluation of our current unused undeveloped, thank you, that was the word, undeveloped property.
Can I suggest a friendly amendment before we have, well, we don't, I guess we have to have a second first, don't we? Yes. Anybody second? Second, okay, good. A friendly amendment, it seems to me the first thing that we would want is a report from staff that identifies what our undeveloped property is and, you know, their assessment of its value. And then if we want to hire a professional appraisal, we can do it at that point.
I think it's a waste of staff's time.
Okay, what property are we going to tell them to appraise, by the way? Who's going to tell them what property to appraise?
Well, this would be a good start. It's an identification of the undeveloped.
Oh, who's going to identify it, though? That's my question.
What?
The city already has, it's my recollection, from reading the letter from the city.
Well, right, and it sounds like Juanita knows what the properties are.
I know what 3 of them are, but I don't know that that's all of the whole
Well, you can start with a.
Five, which is over behind us. And we have the ditch next to the equestrian center, right?
Well, the city has identified our undeveloped properties, and we could start there. There's about 14, and they're all on this map.
Yes.
This was just a zoning matter that these three properties having to do with the city. So, I mean, if you're going to start to open up wanting to know about evaluation, you got to know how it's zoned, whether it's residential or recreational.
Its price will go down significantly when
They just
when
changed
switch
the
it from
zoning of-
residential to recreational.
Yeah, it was just changing to residential to recreational is all it was.
So we know which properties those were that were changed from residential to
That are
recreation.
proposed to be
would be them.
changed. Right. Yes, Director Choi.
Well, we do not have any information. As staff suggested, I think we need to get more information as a community members. I mean, yeah, there are some information circling around from city or whatever, but officially, we do not have any, official information presented to the committee. So I suggest that we get more information, whatever we need to discuss, please provide us a detailed information. Thank you. That's my friendly amendment.
Yes?
Point of information on your friendly amendment.
Yep.
The first part was to have staff identify the
Yeah.
property,
Right.
right? Is there a second part that you were talking about?
And I would ask that they give their, assessment as,
Yeah.
I don't know whether they're qualified or not. I mean,
Well, they don't have the certifications to do property valuations.
But we still have to identify the property, I think. So can we make that amendment just to start with the identification of what property we're talking about?
I accept your amendment of my amendment. So do you accept the friendly amendment? Which is to ask staff to provide a compilation of these undeveloped properties?
I think it's a good first step, but
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, so we have a amendment and a second of the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Okay, it carries. Now we go to the primary motion, which is to ask the staff to do it. All those in favor of asking the staff to identify these properties? All those in favor? Carries unanimously. Motion carries. Thank you. All right.
For clarification, point of clarification, staff is to pull together a list of undeveloped property, but the original motion was obtain appraisal of the
We're not
undeveloped.
having appraisal yet at this time.
That was the original motion.
It was amended. Amendment
you.
carried. Primary
Okay.
motion carried. Yes.
Sure.
There's a comment from Sue Kwam.
Oh, sorry, Sue. Go.
oops.
Oh, that's fine. I think this is good. What I would like to see is our GRF fees, our United fees, Third Mutual fees to possibly go down. And one way to do that is to add more to the base. So if there are properties where we could develop multiple units, that would add to our fee structure. So I hope we consider that in the future.
No, you make a very good point, Sue.
If I may ask the audience members to refrain from speaking, it's distracting up front and causing some issues.
All right. We are, future items, we're going to talk about our RV fee recommendations, class fees, bedroom guest fees, concluding business committee member comments. Let's start with Sue, and we'll move our way around. You have any further comments?
None. Thank you.
Further comments? Further comments? Comments?
None.
Comments? No? Done. We're done. All right. Thank you very much. Meeting went longer than we thought, but it is at, what is this? 3:19. It is adjourned.